Hello, I'm Elizabeth Ashley, the Secret Healer. Welcome to my channel, list of essential oils and their uses. Today's video is entitled, What is Clary Sage Essential Oil Good For? And I shall enjoy this because I've written this book for you. You can find that on Amazon, and there's a couple of clues on the cover. It says, Clary Sage, Salvia sclaria, natural estrogen, ? Now, it's part of a series of 4 videos that I'm going to make today, and then I'm going to hook up one from the past for you. So let me tell you about the series, because otherwise the video is going to be very, very long, and I want you to be able to go, oh, well, that's what I want to know about, and then you can click to it. So the next one in the series is how to use Clary Sage essential oil, right? So that tells you a little bit about some of the oils I would put with Clary Sage for various conditions. So if there's anything that you hear in this video and you think, oh, that's what I'm interested in, that'll tell you the safety and dilution. I'm also doing one specifically for how to use Clary Sage essential oil for hormonal balance, because, well, we'll talk about that in a minute, but it's one of the most important oils for hormones. And then lastly, how to use Clary Sage essential oil to induce labour. So if you're pregnant, that's the one that you want to watch. So I'm going to do all those today, but there is an old one that's very popular that I'll put in the description as well, so you can find it. It's Clary Sage versus Sage essential oil. What's the difference? They're from the same family, so why is one safe and one not safe? So you can find those descriptions. And right, let's get on with the show. So if you look at ancient herbalism, the way I always look at an essential oil is through the lens of medical astrology. So you can look at it from like an Ayurvedic point of view, or a traditional Chinese medicine point of view, or Western astrology. And what that does is it tells you the energetics of how the oil works. So for example, if you looked at ginger, you would say, oh, it's got a heating and a drying energetic. If you looked at peppermint, what would you, yeah, it's cooling, isn't it? And so is Clary Sage. And you can see here, these are our Tongue of the Trees cards. They've been created by myself and a Hungarian aromatherapist called Gergely Halodi, and these are designed to cut past the conscious mind, what's going on in your conscious mind, the thoughts that you deliberately are placed there, and they tap into the unconscious mind, because I believe very strongly that all of the conditions that we talk about today that Clary Sage will help have underlying issues in the tissues, and so these help you to work out what these are. So the key word on the card is clairvoyance. Now, yes, it definitely helps psychicness, but that's not what it means. So actually, the name Clary Sage comes from another ancient term about the plant. So if you go back to medieval medicine, Clary is actually a shortened version of clear eye, and you can see it has pretty little flowers at the top as well as the leaves, and on there comes a little seed. And what they used to do is put the Clary Sage seed into the eyes to clear away all the mucilage and help to clear any nastiness. If you've got a bit of grit in your eye or something like that, it's the best possible treatment for that. So clear eyes. But I always say that it is ruled by the moon and by Mercury. So remember that these sound like they're very occult now, but if you go back to 15th, 16th, 17th century, this is how the doctor used to treat you, okay? So this is not spooky stuff, this is just ancient ways of looking at things. So the things that are ruled by the moon are to do with your emotions, and things to do with Mercury are to do with information and thoughts. So if we think about how the thoughts affect the emotions, and we go back to this clairvoyance, what it's actually saying is watch you don't get influenced by your hormones. Make sure you're seeing what's actually going on, not your thoughts and emotions doing things. So kind of a bit like take things personally, really. So we've talked about how it clears eyes, and definitely we could use the essential oil to do the same. So if you've got conjunctivitis, I would use like a cold compress with just one drop of clary sage. Another great oil for that is to use rose water. So maybe some rose water and clary sage, and maybe 1 drop of tea tree to be able to just clear out the infection. Obviously we just do one sweep and throw that one away, and then do another one. So we put the water into a bowl, and then we soak the compress, squeeze it out, clean out, don't reinfect it, throw it away. So we'll be talking more about this sort of thing in the next video, how to use clary sage essential oil. But there is something you might be interested in with the tongue of the trees, and that's the recipe hub. You can buy a monthly subscription to the recipe hub that tells you exactly the recipe that I would use for each of these different things. And at the moment, we've covered 20 out of the 56 oils in the tongue of the trees box. And that works out at about 160 recipes. And we haven't even touched on clary sage yet. And I can tell you there are about 9 recipes in there already. Excuse me. Most important for clary sage is how it is anxiolytic. That means it is anti-anxiety. It's extremely good at being able to help lower blood pressure for exactly this reason. And usually I pair it with ylang ylang and wear it 1 drop of each on an aroma pendant. But it's got some chemistry that's useful here, which is linalool. You may have heard me talk about linalool when I've been talking about lavender oils. Very antidepressant, very anti-inflammatory, antispasmodic, anti-depressant, a really, really helpful, useful constituent. And if you kind of think about the energetics, we said it's cooling, but I would say it's euphoric, you know? It makes you... In the olden days, it was called muscatel sage. And if you read some of the old things like by Culpeper or John Gerard, they describe how it provoketh to venery. So muscatel sage was what they used to adulterate the beer and the wine with, particularly beer, because hops were expensive. And it tastes the same, and it gets you incredibly drunk. In sort of uninhibited, you know, but the next day you know that you've had it because it feels like you have an axe in your head. But I love this idea of provoketh to venery, you know, that 16th century tavern, and there's sawdust on the floor, and there's tankards swinging, and there's bosoms heaving, and you're like, I've had my clary sage, come here. And the next morning, okay, what's the headache? Oh my goodness me, where have I been? So watch it. Do not mix it with your beer. It is antidepressant. It's this euphoria, you know. So you become a bit more it's a really, really nice oil. I use it to help people who have OCD. So in my book, did I mention I've written a book? In my book, I talk about how estrogen is used to help people, men who have obsessive compulsive disorder. And we talk more about this estrogen connection in the hormonal balance one, but we've talked about linalool, one constituent. There's another one called sclareol. And in the 1990s, 2 tremendous aromatherapists called Daniel Panuel and Pierre Franchon did some experiments and found that sclareol is almost identical in structure to estrogen. Now, this is a bone of contention, hence why we have a question mark at the end, because lots of people say, oh, but it's not, it mimics estrogen, but it's not the same, it doesn't have affinity to the receptor. We can get very bored by the whole thing. What I can tell you is it will help to balance estrogen because it does mimic it. And so what's interesting, you know, is you don't need to swallow it, people. You don't need to drink it. You don't even need to put it on the skin. Inhalation will do the job. So what it does is it goes up the nose to the back of the nose where there is the olfactory bulb. On top of the olfactory bulb, there is around about 100,000 receptors, each sending messages along the olfactory nerves to the brain, usually to the amygdala. We know that Clary sage affects the pituitary. Now, the pituitary is, imagine that the amygdala says, I'm very frightened, I'm going to send some signals. It sends signals to the hypothalamus, who goes, right, we need to do some work here. We need to get him to jump off the floor away from the saber-toothed tiger. And he sends information to the pituitary. And the pituitary expends lots of signals for different hormones. It really is a control mechanism for most of the hormones in the body. And so what it does then is when this message gets to the pituitary, it calms down the different hormones, including balancing any deficit in estrogen. And of course, maybe it's not known by everybody that we talk about estrogen and progesterone as if they are female hormones, and of course they are. But men don't only have testosterone, they also have estrogen and progesterone. So when that goes out of balance for them too, it becomes problematic. So interesting. So it's useful for OCD. What's very, very useful is it's very antispasmodic. So what does that mean? So, excuse me, there is a train. Imagine cramps, you know. Do you have, well, I have restless legs. Do you have restless legs? Oh, you have my sympathies. You know, you feel like I don't even know where the cramp is, but I can't keep my legs still. Beautiful, beautiful medicines. Very, very calming stuff. So I like to have a couple of drops of Clary sage in my bath because I'm not pregnant. Can I just say that there? We'll talk about that in the next video. But it's antispasmodic in the same way. Period pain, period cramps, menstrual cramps. Antispasmodic. It releases it all off. So if you've got this feeling of Clary sage goes, as does Roman chamomile. So the two of them together is a beautiful, beautiful blend. And if you have restless legs, in the next video I'll do a little recipe for how to help with those and how to use the Clary sage to alleviate those. Next on my list was the restless legs. So as I've said a little bit already, hormonal. So it's very, very useful oil to use in labour, and that has been known since the beginning of records. And Culpeper says it bringeth down the menses. So what that means is it brings your period on, but also it helps to expel the afterbirth. So after the baby's been born, what happens is the uterus contracts and you get another one out. But it wouldn't be my first choice for that. Actually, I'd use jasmine to do that, but I have to say that I use those two together to help contractions anyway. So as I say, if you want to know about labour, if you want to know about hormones, look in the description, more information. So let's have a quick recap. What's it good for? It's good for hormonal balance. What I haven't said is it's very good for skincare if you've got greasy skin, and we'll talk about that in the next video. It's very good for conjunctivitis and eye problems, for anxiety, for depression, for high blood pressure, for obsessive compulsive disorder, for any kind of cramping, restless legs, and just mood balance generally, you know, euphoria. So we can say it's aphrodisiac. It wouldn't be my first choice, but given that it provoketh to venery, it's gotta be good, hasn't it? I do love it. I do love it. So have a look. This is what is Clary Sage essential oil good for. Look in the description below and I'll show you how to use Clary Sage essential oil.
So you get your phone, turn it this way up, and then there's a little red subscribe button. Turn it grey by clicking it, and then there's a little bell, click that, press all at the bottom of your phone or tablet or computer. It'll say you will receive all notifications, and then there's a little hand with a thumbs up. Click that, it'll turn it blue and it says add it to your liked videos, and there will be comments, and if you want to you can send a comment and say like hi, this is mum and dad, right? And then the link to the next video will be in the description below.